Imagine medieval Europe at war. Steel crashing against steel. Men shouting over the noise. Mud, blood, and bodies underfoot. And before infantry lines even meet, something else is unleashed. Not horses, not soldiers, dogs. Massive, muscular dogs, bred to hit with force, clamp down, and never let go. These weren't symbols, they weren't mascots, they weren't pets sleeping beside the hearth. They were weapons, and they were called the Alaunt. Today, the Alaunt is completely extinct. There are no pure bloodlines, no preserved remains, no living examples. And yet its influence is everywhere, in mastiffs, in bulldogs, in powerful working dogs bred for grip, courage, and control. To understand how that happened, we have to go back to the collapse of the Roman world. The Alant takes its name from the Alans, a nomadic Iranian warrior people who moved west during the final centuries of the Roman Empire. The Alans were feared cavalry fighters, known for speed, aggression, and adaptability. And wherever they went, their dogs went with them. These weren't ordinary camp dogs. They were large, disciplined, and aggressive animals used for hunting and combat. As the Alans passed through Gaul, into Hispania, and across parts of Italy, their dogs were bred with local stock. Over time, the people faded into history, but the dogs remained. Eventually, Alant stopped referring to the Alans themselves. It became the name of a dog. Not a breed in the modern sense, but a type, a category of working dog shaped by war, hunting, and control. Unlike many ancient dogs that survive only in legend, the Alant was well documented. Medieval writers, hunters, and nobles described them in detail. They were large, but not slow, muscular, but not bulky, deep-chested, long-legged, short-coated. Broad, powerful heads on bodies built for movement rather than mass. If you're picturing a modern English mastiff, that's too heavy. The Alant was closer to a lean, athletic predator, something that could sprint, strike, and wrestle a full-grown animal to the ground. Historical sources suggest multiple types of Alant, each bred for a specific role. Some were faster and more agile, favored for hunting. Others were heavier and more aggressive, used for guarding, fighting, and war. There were even varieties associated with butchers and city guards, dogs designed to control livestock and intimidate in crowded urban spaces. What united all of them was temperament. These dogs were fearless, intensely loyal to their handler, highly driven, and extremely dangerous when mishandled. The Alant's role in warfare is one of the most striking parts of its history. Medieval battles were chaotic and loud long before disciplined formations became standard. Shock and fear were weapons in themselves. Dogs like the Alant were used to deliver both. They were released ahead of advancing troops to break formations, attack horses, drag soldiers down, and spread panic. A man could face an armored opponent and keep fighting. A man suddenly hit at knee height by a screaming, lunging animal often broke. These dogs were trained to target vulnerable areas, legs, arms, faces. They were trained to hold, not release, to ignore pain, to keep fighting even when injured. Some wore thick leather armor or spiked collars to protect their necks and throats. This wasn't ceremonial, it was practical. The Alant wasn't the only war dog in history, but it became one of the most influential in Europe. Away from the battlefield, it was just as important and just as dangerous. Alants were elite hunting dogs used against game that could easily kill a human. Wild boar, bears, bulls, wolves. This wasn't chase and bark hunting. The Alant's job was to seize the animal and hold it until the hunter arrived. That required extreme courage, pain tolerance, intelligence, and coordination with humans. Medieval hunting manuals repeatedly describe Alants as ideal for dangerous game precisely because they did not hesitate. They were expensive to keep and risky to own. As a result, Alants were never common. They belonged to nobles, warriors, and professional hunters, people who needed them and could control them. Even medieval writers, in an age far more accustomed to violence than our own, warned that these dogs were not for inexperienced handlers. The Alant was loyal, but it was not gentle. It respected strength, consistency, and command. And yet, despite all of this power and prestige, the Alaunt did not survive into the modern world. It didn't disappear overnight. It faded. As warfare changed, dogs lost their place on the battlefield. Firearms made shock tactics obsolete. You can't intimidate a musket line with animals, no matter how brave they are. At the same time, Europe became more urban. Large, aggressive dogs that required constant work and strict handling became liabilities. Breeding priorities shifted. Dogs were no longer shaped as general purpose, tools of war and hunting. They were bred for narrower roles: guarding, bull baiting, herding, companionship. The Alaunt didn't vanish. It was absorbed. Its blood was folded into regional mastiffs, butcher dogs, and bull baiting dogs. Over generations, these descendants became heavier, shorter-faced, or more specialized depending on their job. Through this process, the Alant helped shape the ancestors of the English Mastiff, the Old English Bulldog, the Cane Corso-type dogs of Italy, and the Spanish Alano. The Alano Español is often cited as the closest surviving relative, though even it is not a pure Alant. No one in the medieval world was trying to preserve breeds. Dogs were bred for usefulness, not legacy. When the job changed, the dog changed with it. By the early modern period, the Alant as a distinct type was gone. But its legacy remains. Whenever you see a dog bred for gripping strength, fearlessness, and absolute loyalty to a single handler, you're seeing echoes of the Alant, the design philosophy of a time when dogs were shaped by conflict and survival, not comfort. The Alant reminds us of something we often forget. Dogs didn't evolve alongside humans only as companions. They evolved as hunters, as protectors, as tools, and sometimes as weapons. The Alant represents the extreme end of that relationship. A dog built entirely for dominance, control, and violence, forged by human needs in a brutal world. And when that world changed, the Alant disappeared with it. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well at a job humanity no longer needed. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for further videos on the history of dogs and other animals throughout history. See you next time.